what is it that as investors we want to look for in a company when it comes to their US GTM, right? And what I want to cover is, again, the building blocks of US GTM, but just try to take it from an investor perspective. But very quickly, how many of you have actually raised seed funding? Okay. And how many of you are thinking of going to the US? Okay, that's good. So the big thing about going to the US right now is it's a great place and a great time to be as an Indian SaaS company, right? You look at any metric and everybody's jumping up and down. It's fantastic to be an Indian SaaS founder, right? And you can just see the numbers for yourself. Everything is up 50% in terms of ARR over the last 2 years. $12 billion of ARR is happening out of India, right? And the really interesting metric as an investor, and you should know as a founder, is that SaaS companies are only 10% of startups in India, but they are 20% of unicorns. I don't know how much people even believe in unicorns anymore, but that's a fact. So it's a lot easier to build a large, successful startup in the SaaS business than it is in anything else across, right? So the hit rates are pretty high. And 80% of Indian SaaS companies find their calling in the States just because it's $150 billion of spend, and there's only so much you can do in India, right? So before I go further, just to give you some background on my side as to, you know, what I've done to be able to stand up here and talk about it is, I used to run global sales for a US pricing SaaS company. Originally, I did that for about 8 years. We built it to about $35 million in ARR. Then I ran global sales for a financial research and analytics company out of India, but all in the US market. This is before I became a VC. And as a VC at Arkam, we are investors in SpotDraft, we're investors in SignZ, we're investors in a bunch of companies. And in the past, my partner's done MoEngage. So we've kind of seen the journey, okay? So everything I'm about to say is from that context of what's really going on. Now, SaaS is all about growth, but this is the reality of what you're up against, right? Most SaaS companies are going to be out of business in 3 to 5 years, but being out of business is also something I called a coma state, right? So McKinsey has kind of come out with very good numbers saying, if you're growing at 20-25% as a SaaS company, you're going to be out of business in 5 years. You may still be alive, but you're in life support. And if you've raised any kind of institutional funding or seed funding, it's really not worth your while, right? So the question becomes, what do then investors really validate when you come and talk to them, right? So let's say you're building a SaaS company, you've raised some seed funding, and the real question while investors talk to you is, everybody is investing because they love you as a founder. They're investing because they believe you can actually build a company. They're investing because they think you came from Freshworks, you must know something. They're investing because you worked at eBay in the Bay Area and you came back here. Hey, SaaS is awesome, you got to be able to do something. But the back of their mind, at least the way we handicap is, hey, is this thing going to get off the ground if US is their target market? Okay, so what is this GTM they have in mind, and do we really believe that or not? Unlike any other startup category in India, this is the biggest risk factor for investors. And you may as well understand this because this has a lot of bearing in how you pitch. We get a lot of pitches where we come and talk to founders and everybody's talking about the 3-4 customers they have. People are talking about traction. I thought the last one on enterprise sales was pretty good. The one before, product-led growth, was also very good. But this is where you kind of get the rub, which is SaaS is all about growth, and the pressure of growth makes all of us do stupid things, investors, founders, and the ecosystem. Because we all read things that say, hey, you got to triple your revenue the first couple of years, and then you just double it for 2 more years, and you're on the same track as the awesome SaaS companies. As a result, you're going to get funded, life's awesome, right? But the problem with that is, we are not sequencing it the right way, okay? So the real question we have to ask ourselves as investors is, are we funding PMF discovery, or are we funding this legendary, T2, D3, which is triple the first couple of years and double the next 3 years, right? And the problem and the reason this is really important is initial traction is not a validator of anything, okay? And I'll give you some personal stories on this. Just because you've even hit 2 million ARR, it's not a validator of product market fit. We've seen companies with 5 million ARR, right? Everybody's sucking wind the following year because you actually don't have product market fit. But this is where the catch-22 is, which is you raise money by presenting the specter of having these customers and being able to double and triple your ARR. To be fair, that's what excites investors. But on the other hand, you find out after you've raised funding that everybody's been drinking Kool-Aid. Your board's been drinking Kool-Aid, you've been drinking Kool-Aid, investors have been drinking Kool-Aid, and things are just not progressing the way they're supposed to. And that's an ugly situation to be, which is also called a train wreck. Okay? And you don't want to be there, right? So, which kind of brings up the question, what do you do, right? So our experience has really been what you can articulate very honestly to yourself and your team and investors is, where exactly are you in this journey of product market fit? Okay. By the way, one more question. How many of you are enterprise sales versus so-called product-led? Enterprise? Okay, great. And last question, and I promise you no more hand raising. At least the data would say 80% of Indian companies are horizontal or vertical SaaS. Are you in that 80% bucket? Or are you infrastructure? Infra? Horizontal, vertical SaaS? Okay, that's the bulk of it. All right. So the reason this is kind of important is, if you are in horizontal or vertical SaaS, and to some extent even in infrastructure, frankly, it doesn't matter if you're product-led or sales-led, okay? There is this whole specter of, hey, I'm product-led, 95% of my product is the same in India, is the same in Southeast Asia, same in the US. I'm really sorry to tell you it doesn't matter, because you still have the same problem, fundamental problem I'm talking about, which is, are you sequencing your desire, ability, and funding secured to really nail your product market fit before you're promising growth? That is the way the cart is behind the horse. Otherwise, you're doing it the other way around. Okay? And I'll give you a really quick story on that. My pricing SaaS company that I talked about, actually didn't start out as a pricing SaaS company. Okay? So we were in the US. My founder was a second-time founder. He had sold his past company for $400 million. Money was no object, and we actually built something called collaborative planning software for, pretty much it's a horizontal for sales and operations planning. Most of you get what sales and operations planning is. In a large enterprise, for example, if you're a Whirlpool, they were one of our pilot customers, and I hear everything about enterprise selling. But just because we had 7 customers, we had $4 million in revenue, and finally we just gave up on sales and ops planning because we figured something out, that there is no damn buyer or owner for this. Every function is actually participating in sales and operations planning under duress. We've got an amazing piece of software that only the CEO of the company loves, but you're trying to sell this and get it implemented and adopted by 5 other functions in the company, right? And nobody has any desire. It doesn't matter what you think, it is what the customer tells you that matters. Okay? So the idea of clarity on what do customers view as the problem versus what you as the product creator view as a problem is factor number 1 in product market fit. And you cannot figure this out by sitting in your office. You cannot figure this out in an outbound motion. You can only figure this out by investing in customer and market discovery. Especially if you're going to the States, tons of conferences. You can even come over to our office. I can also give you a lot of gyan. It will not help you. What will help you is you find your own structured way of going out and talking to 35 customers in the US who are actual, you think are buyers of this product, without selling them anything, and validating whether is this a problem you believe in, is this a problem you have budget for, if not, who has budget for, and is this something that you really, where you align with my vision of the problem. And 90% of the time you will find if you had 5 assumptions, 3.5 of them are wrong. So that is the first iteration of your product market fit. So if you guys have seen this, India's, Chandrayaan is out there. The best metaphor I can give you is no rocket just takes off directly to the moon. If you've seen any picture, there is something called a gravity assist. You're going out into space, you're doing 4 loops around Earth, you're gathering more and more momentum, then you're off to the moon. That is precisely what you want to be doing, and frankly, what you want to be raising funding for, and being very clear with your investor, this is where I am today, and this is true even if you're 3 million ARR, 5 million ARR. Okay? The other point is buyer and user willingness to pay. I mean, we have had experience with, one of our portfolio companies where everything is off the charts in terms of metrics. And it's a freemium product. Everybody loves the free. Nobody likes the EM, because they found out by doing market research that the person who has to pay is not the person, and who has the credit card is not the person who's the user. Okay? These are all very standard, repeat things, but you have to find the answer for your own case, right? And I'm really sorry to say this, but frankly, if US is your target market and you've spent a couple of years in India and you're trying to sell to US enterprises, odds are you've wasted your time. Okay? You've wasted your time because the buyer behavior is completely different. A US customer is very likely, and I would differ from the prior speaker, the US customer is very likely to want to pay for innovation. I'll give you an example. Finally, after dropping sales and operations planning, we decided that our way of investing in product market fit was to go attend a bunch of events where we thought we had a shot, right? We were standing in our booth, and the chief pricing officer of GE Aircraft Engines comes up, and he's walking around and he's saying, look, I've been trying to solve this problem of configured product pricing with scenario planning for the last 5 years. You seem to have something. Why don't you come over and meet me in Cincinnati? Okay? So no amount of outbound emails, no amount of writing fancy things about your software, which is what I call, hoping something sticks. You throw shit up on the wall and hope something sticks, versus even spray and pray outbound is not going to work. So my first point is, as you're iterating, you're this, satellite gaining speed outside Earth before you go off to the moon, document and articulate your customer and demand discovery journey, okay? When we invest in, our best companies have been ones who have come in and said, this is what I thought about my value proposition. This is what I thought about my customer on year 1, 6 months ago. Having gone and personally as a founder, listened to 20 customers, I have evolved my view of demand, that there is no demand in this type of customer size. There is no demand in these verticals. There is demand here, right? And this is my learning, and I'm sharing my learning with you in the form of data. We get very excited. In fact, we start shivering with excitement because it's very rare to find somebody. Everybody else is throwing a pitch book at you in terms of, hey, just look at my numbers. But this shows that you are investing and iterating through your own product market fit. Okay? Now, just because there is demand doesn't mean you are the chosen one, right? There can be a lot of demand in the market, right? And it's very counterintuitive what your value proposition is. So we have a portfolio company that we invested 18 months ago at 0.8 million ARR. They are closing in on 8 million ARR this month, okay? They spent 2 years, their first 2 years in India, selling to Indian enterprises. If the founder was here today, he would tell you he just completely wasted his time. Product market fit was off, customer value prop was off, etc. But what they found originally, and it is very much a 30 to 50K ACV product, right? What they've really done in this looping around and iterating is they've figured out that what they thought was the best software in the world that they've built, which is beautiful, elegant software, their value prop is actually 24/7 support out of India. Okay? They are 25% cheaper than somebody else. Okay? And they also found out that certain customer, sizes, people with 150 to 700 employees are a much better fit for them than people either with greater than 1,000 employees or less than 100 employees, right? And they also found out as part of this that we're going to stop doing anything with customers in London. We're going to stop doing anything with customers in the Middle East. We're going to stop doing anything with customers in New Zealand. It is the exact same product. And the reason you stop is that there are implications of the type of GTM you choose on every aspect of the firm. Okay? So if you suddenly accept the customer from London, all of a sudden your engineering guys are going to sit with you and say, hey, what do you want me to do about GDPR? You hadn't even planned about it. Okay? So part of your iteration is really trying to narrow down what is my customer segment and also why me in that customer segment. Right? And the last point I would make is just tying the last two slides together, which is validating there is demand, right? Validating why you for that demand, and from that building customer segmentation and ideas on what your value prop are is a ongoing exercise well beyond 5 million ARR. Okay, well beyond. Because you never get enough until you get to a certain critical mass. And so what does all this mean, right? That doesn't mean you throw everything out of the window and you don't have inside sales and you don't have metrics. No, that's not true. What it really means is if you're getting tighter and tighter product market fit, if you are able to see movement in your PMF metrics. So for example, when I was at Amba, we were selling from here. We would try to sell to our analytics to hedge funds. We would sell it to companies as large as a Fidelity. We would also go try to sell it to Charles Schwab and Bank of New York. Okay, it was very easy for us to sell a $100,000 project or analytics suite to a hedge fund. But what we realized is the amount of effort we are putting to sell 100,000 and the churn in that business is just not worth it. Okay? But when we started 12 months before that, we were pretty much spamming everybody that moved in the financial services space. And that's not the right way for you to ever get to the kind of scale you need as a SaaS company. Right? So my point to you over here is, if originally, I'll just pick a metric. Let's say for every 100 emails you sent, right, you were getting people opening 5 and you were getting 1 call. Right? If you have tightened your segment and if you have really tightened in terms of what your value prop is, you have a spreadsheet where you're seeing how is that moving quarter by quarter. If you have actually understood your value proposition and you have actually understood why your product sells, that will change the email that you send. That will change the messaging on your website. That will actually change what you say on the first call. It'll change what you say in the demo. And unfortunately, we get so caught up in just the act of running with our startup that there is nobody who's taking cognizance of how are my PMF metrics really moving, because the tighter you keep this, the better off you're going to be. So originally, if you started out with, hey, I'm getting 7 out of 100, and that's now beginning to move to 12 out of 100, 15 out of 100, it took me 100 outbound calls to close 1 demo customer. With my change in messaging and my segmentation, is it becoming 3 customers, right? Then you know. But if it is the same thing, you have a problem. You haven't really solved anything. Yeah? And that's really what I meant by your ideal customer profile and GTM repeatability needs to come in. So coming back to the point of what investors look for, we are really looking not just to know that I have a GTM motion to go to the States. We want to know why are you doing what you say you're doing, right? And you want to know that as well, not just us. And based on that, you can actually go out and now set in place the right kind of GTM motion, right? So everybody's talked about it. First 2 years, the CEO sells, the founder sells everything. But where the breakpoints come is as soon as the founder gets off every customer call, in your outbound motion, can your one-down team actually begin to sell? And the way you enable your one-down team again to sell is by getting your PMF right. As a founder, you carry a big stick. Everybody wants to meet a founder, even if it's in the States. You are much more articulate, you know the most about your product. But the minute you get your AEs trying to sell this, unless it is a perfect fit from a PMF perspective, they're all going to struggle, right? So as you tighten your metrics get better and better on the outbound side. I just gave one example. We don't have time to go through all the metrics. But then finally, you're now in a position to drive inbound as well. Your product market fit insights drive your messaging, your value prop, what you say in events, what kind of demos that you do, what kind of customer success stories that you have, etc. And now you're finally ready to actually hire salespeople, okay, in the States. So one of the things that we find again and again, I'm just telling you this because it surprises us how often it happens, which is everybody is under so much pressure to show growth via your GTM that we all forget that if you come in and say, I'm 1 million ARR, I'm going to put 2 sales people on the ground in the US, I totally agree. If they're reporting into the founder, whether it's in India, it's in the US. But if you're 2 million ARR and you're saying, I'm going to hire my VP of sales in the US because the person has connections, either in financial services, they have connections in logistics, they have connections somewhere, that's a sure flop. And the reason it's a flop is the same problem again. Exceptional VPs of sales are still not founders. They need a product that has product market fit for them to then drive it to the kind of growth that you're expecting from them. So there's no point investing in, shall I say, a very large sales team, investing in sales, committing to your board that, hey, I'm going to hire salespeople and as a result my ARR is going to go from 2 million to 7 million this year. That just ain't happening. So my overall submission is you can convince investors and shape their conviction on your story by actually sharing data, by actually sharing founder level experiences of your PMF journey, which will then bring clarity as to why are you raising the money. If you want to go out and raise 3 million and say I'm at 1 million ARR, 0.5 million ARR, but I'm going to raise 2 million to actually find my product market fit. And based on that, I'm going to be able to show the SaaS kind of scaling that I need to be scaling for, rather than fall into the trap of saying, if I go to an investor, I just have to show crazy growth and I'll worry about how I get there, because odds are you won't get there, right? And I really think that evidence of investing in structured product market fit. So last point, what are the ways of doing that, right? The best $100,000 you ever spent is, as a SaaS company, is there are multiple SaaS market research firms out there that will get you 30, 40 meetings with your target segment or whatever you believe is your target segment. Invest in that more than, investing in a bunch of emails from here, right? But you can do the same thing through events. You can do the same thing through connections, through advisors. But take all of that and make sure you have a rational pitch to your investors as to what is it that you're really planning on doing over the next 2 years, because believe me, you're much more likely to get serious funding if the tighter and tighter you make your product market fit and go from there. So that's all I had. Cool.